Hello, everybody. It's Bishop Barron. I'm standing here at George Washington's house at Mount Vernon. I'm looking out the other side here to the beautiful Potomac. I'm in the D.C. area because tomorrow we deliver our Religious Liberty Commission report to the president. So that's why I'm in this area. But, I wanted to come here as we celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country. Maybe it seems a little bit corny to talk about George Washington, but it shouldn't, because Washington was, as they always say, the indispensable figure in our founding. And I want to mention two things. First of all, religious liberty, which has been on my mind very much the past year. The first liberty as enshrined in the First Amendment. But in 1790, so George Washington has just become president, he writes two extraordinary letters. One to Jews, and it was a sign of his solidarity with Jews, his pledge to stand against all forms of bigotry and to permit religious liberty. The other was a letter to Catholics with the same sentiment. Now, mind you, especially at that time, both were very minority religions. In Washington, here he is, the father of the country, represents, the revolutionary generation, that he reached out with such generosity to Jews and to Catholics, signaled this great American value of religious liberty, born of our respect for human dignity. It's interesting, those two letters come out in 1790. 1791 is the ratification of the First Amendment. What do we find? Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, right? We don't want an official religion of the country. At the same time, allowing for the free exercise of religion. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that Washington's own attitudes toward religion had a lot to do with the formulation of that amendment. And his own attitudes, I think, were formative of this conviction. So I think it's worthwhile on this 250th anniversary to celebrate George Washington for the role that he played in the cultivation of religious liberty. Here's the second thing, and being here at Mount Vernon, it comes to mind. So now go back to 1783. The Revolutionary War effectively ended 1781 with the surrender at Yorktown, but for 2 years, the peace was being negotiated. Not till 1783 do we find the Treaty of Paris and the official end of the war. So during those 2 years, Washington kept his army together because he wasn't exactly sure what's going to happen. Well, once the peace treaty was determined, America had won the war. Here was George Washington, national hero, revered figure, in possession of a mighty army. Figures from Julius Caesar to Napoleon, what had they always done in similar circumstances? They became king or emperor or leader. Of course they did. What was going to limit George Washington at that point? But instead, Washington returns to where Congress is meeting at the time, which is the Maryland State House. Still stands, beautiful building in Annapolis. I've been there. I think the Maryland Senate still meets there. George Washington returns, and what he did before Congress is he surrendered his commission. They had commissioned him to run the army in 1775. He had fought the war over these many years. And then at this moment, instead of leading his army and establishing himself as the Emperor King of America, he humbly surrendered and resigned his commission to Congress. And this took place, by the way, December 23rd, 1783. And he said, I want to be home by Christmas Eve. So then George Washington, head of this mighty, victorious army, got on a horse, and I'm sure it would have been snowy, cold weather, rode by himself back here to Mount Vernon and retired. When word of that got around the world, people were astounded. In fact, King George III said, when he heard it, he must be the greatest man in the world. It's a quiet moment, but one of extraordinary significance. When Washington, with tremendous humility, said, look, I'm not here to be emperor. I'm not here to be a military despot. I'm acknowledging the primacy of Congress. Now, they called him back into power. So Washington, runs the Constitutional Convention in 1787, and he becomes, of course, the first president. But that gesture, that humble gesture of resigning his military commission and leaving the government to Congress, it set the tone for the best of our history. That humble move of George Washington, which caught the attention of the world because it was so unprecedented, so unusual. Well, I gotta say, it might seem corny to be talking about how great George Washington was, but he was a great figure. He was the indispensable person. And in so many of the moves that he made, he set the tone for the ethos of our country. And now listen, at a time when there are prominent figures in our public life right now who are calling into question American values, people being elected to high office who are standing athwart the great principles of our founders, I think it's worthwhile maybe to shout a little bit about these great figures, including and especially the great George Washington. And God bless you.